Welcome to the Missing Media channel. I'm your host, Ravina Rastaban, aka The Realist Astrologer, and this is another astrological case study. This one is about Nikko Jenkins, and I have titled it A Tale of Demonic Possession. Now, Nikko Jenkins was born September 16th, 1986, and he is a very dark-sided Virgo who is currently on death row for the murder of 4 individuals. Jenkins is not your average death row inmate by far. He is severely mentally ill, and a major part of his mental illness is delusion. His birth number of 16 reinforces the theme of mental illness as well as delusion, since 16 is akin to Neptune. However, in this particular case, I believe that the underlying reason for Jenkins' mental illness diagnosis is demonic possession. Here's some information from Wikipedia. Nikko Allen Jenkins, born September 16, 1986, is an American spree killer convicted of committing 4 murders in Omaha, Nebraska in August 2013. The murders occurred within a month after he had been released from prison after serving 10.5 years of the 21 years to which he had been sentenced for a carjacking committed at age 15 and for assaults committed in prison. Jenkins stated that he has committed the killings at the command of the ancient serpent god Apophis. He was found competent to stand trial, found guilty of the 4 murders, and in May 2017 sentenced to death. Jenkins was born in Colorado to parents David A. McGee and Lori Jenkins. He spent much of his life prior to the murders in the criminal justice system. He first entered the system at age 7 after bringing a loaded .25 caliber handgun to his elementary school. At age 11, Jenkins was kicked out of a group home for repetitive violence and stopped regularly attending school. He had committed multiple assaults, including 1 knife assault by age 13. In 2003, after spending time in a youth detention facility, Jenkins was sent to prison for 2 armed carjackings. While incarcerated, he was charged twice for his part in the 2006 prison riot, as well as for assaulting a prison guard while on furlough for his grandmother's funeral. In handwritten letters dated November 3, 2013, submitted to the Omaha World Herald, prosecutors, and a judge, Jenkins said he wished to plead guilty to all counts in the 4 slayings and that he would protect Apophis' kingdom with animalistic, savage brutality. On February 19, 2014, Jenkins filed a federal lawsuit seeking $24.5 million from the state of Nebraska for wrongfully releasing him from prison, stating that his claims of hearing voices from Apophis were repeatedly ignored. In the 6-page handwritten filing, he stated that being kept in solitary confinement augmented his schizophrenia. He blamed corrections officials for the 4 killings. Jenkins claimed that his problems were caused by mental illness and that he had schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and obsessive-compulsive disorder. The judge ordered a psychiatric evaluation. The psychiatrist concluded that Jenkins had antisocial personality disorder and was faking psychotic symptoms. After being declared competent to stand trial, the proceedings against Jenkins commenced. On his request, Jenkins was allowed to represent himself at trial under the guidance of advisory attorneys. Throughout the trial, Jenkins maintained that he acts under the command of Apophis. And Apophis, I'm just adding my little explanation. Apophis is an actual Egyptian god or demon. His courtroom antics included speaking in tongues, howling, and laughing as prosecutors recounted the details of his victim's death. On April 16th, Judge Peter Battalion found Nikko Jenkins guilty of all 4 murders. Jenkins was initially scheduled to be sentenced on August 11, 2014. The date was delayed indefinitely following a hearing held to determine whether he was capable of understanding the death penalty proceedings against him. On July 29th, Judge Battalion ordered Jenkins to be housed at the Lincoln Regional Center Psychiatric Hospital until doctors were satisfied with his condition. Officials at the regional center refused to house Jenkins due to inadequate security, but doctors agreed to treat him at Lincoln Prison. In May 2017, Jenkins was sentenced to death by a 3-judge panel. He was also sentenced to 450 years in prison on weapons charges connected with the murders. So, basically, Nikko Jenkins believes that he is in cahoots with this demon god called Apophis, which is this Egyptian god. I'm going to just read a little bit about this demon. So Apep, also known as Apophis, was the ancient Egyptian deity who embodied chaos and was thus the opponent of light and Ma'at. He appears in art as a giant serpent. His name is reconstructed by Egyptologists as Apophis, as it is written, and survived in later Coptic Apophis. Apep was first mentioned in the 8th dynasty, and he was honored in the names of the 14th dynasty King Apepi of the Greater Hyksos King Apophis. So he's pulling from Egyptian mythology with respect to this persona that he says has been instructing him, or this entity that he says has been instructing him to make sacrifices on his behalf. So let me just read a little bit more from this website, omaha.com. Nikko Jenkins spoke in tongues or some language of his supposed serpent god. He smirked and laughed briefly as prosecutors recounted details of his victim's death. He pleaded guilty, then refused to accept prosecutors' accounts of the shootings. He then pleaded no contest, and a judge found him guilty. He blamed the Nebraska prison system for the deaths of the 4 Omahans, I guess, for releasing him despite his purported schizophrenia. He argued that he wouldn't hurt a woman unless Apophis commanded him to. So this is where he's talking about the murder of this woman. It was just a random murder. He didn't even know her. So he's saying that he would never hurt a woman, but the deity Apophis commanded him to, and that's why he killed that woman. So in long, at times indecipherable dialogue, Jenkins insisted that the killings of Kruger, that's the woman, and the others were human sacrifices, that he was merely the vessel that carried out the commands of Apophis, his serpent god. Jenkins didn't bring up voices until the end of the hearing when Judge Battalion asked him point blank if he had killed each victim. He claimed that command voices clouded his memory of the killings. He said he remembered that the voices match phrases that are tattooed on his face. So as you can see in the pictures that I posted of Jenkins, his whole face is tatted with, tatted. Also, it's not just tatted. He has scars on his face because one time he took razor blades to his face and tried to carve some images. He tried to carve, I believe it was 666 in his forehead, but then it ended up being reversed because he did it in a mirror. And also he tried to carve upside down pentagram in his face as well. So as you can see, he looks pretty jacked up. He also has that characteristic Virgo look, in my opinion, and he was definitely showing his Virgo identity in the court proceedings because Virgo is very vocal. Virgo is very opinionated. Virgo is going to make sure that their voice is heard. And it's funny that he filed for that lawsuit, which is very dark-sided Virgo, in my opinion, where he's even criticizing how the prison system did him. Now, in his defense, I would agree because going back to what it says on Wikipedia, he was released from prison after serving 10.5 years of a 21-year sentence, and he was released on a technicality because of overcrowding in the prison. So ideally he should have never been released, especially knowing that he was a very violent offender. However, he did not commit any murders prior to 2013. So maybe that's why they decided on allowing him to be released early. But he was involved in some violent carjackings, and I believe, according to the reports, he did stab somebody or he held someone. It says knife assault by age 13. So also what he did, he tried to carve the image of the deity Apophis in his penis. So he mutilated his penis, which in my opinion, when you start getting into that serious type of mutilation, that is a telltale sign of demonic possession. So let me get into his chart, because his chart is very telling, especially in terms of the demonic possession piece. So one of the main issue, well, the underlying issue is his South Node in Libra. You know, I'm always talking about the nodes. So his South Node in Libra points to him not being in full control of himself. So it doesn't, that South Node in Libra doesn't have to necessarily deal with him being in a relationship with a person, someone in the flesh. This could pertain to him being in a relationship or him working in conjunction with that entity, Apophis. And what reinforces that idea is his Venus, ruler of Libra, is in Scorpio and is conjoined to Pluto. His Venus is at the 7th degree of Scorpio, which echoes his birth number of 16, because 16 breaks down to 7. Both of them are akin to Neptune. So that 7 is about spirituality. So that points to him being into the Egyptian mythology, but it can also deal with mental illness. It can also deal with being haunted. So with his birth number being a 16 and Venus conjoined to Pluto in Scorpio, that alone is pointing to possible demonic possession, because let me tell you how that'll manifest. So that could cause someone to be very compulsive, where they're not even in control of their actions. They're not in control of their feelings. And this Venus in Scorpio conjoined to Pluto in Scorpio points to the voices that he's been hearing. Venus deals with the voice, and that Scorpio energy can deal with voices that come from beyond, that come from the astral realm. And as I always say, the astral realm is where demons like to hang out. So again, let me just go back to that Libra South Node. So to reiterate, his South Node is in Libra. It's at the 22nd degree. That 22nd degree is about submission and caution. It is about control or be controlled. So that reinforces what I said about him not being in full control of himself. And with the Libra influence, just know that that Libra in general can just deal with others. So the others, like I said, doesn't necessarily have to deal with an actual person in the flesh. It can deal with a spirit. It could deal with a demonic entity. Now, Nikko Jenkins also has Sun square Chiron, which basically that's dealing with him just being a odd character, someone being that's incorrigible, someone who is antisocial, somebody that cannot uh be integrated in society, which is why they didn't even accept him at that psychiatric center. They said that there was not enough security on hand to be able to deal with him, because he's highly unpredictable, and that Sun square Chiron can deal with that because his Chiron's a Gemini. And that also deals with, again, him being influenced by some type of information that he's receiving, some type of communication that he's receiving. And because it's Chiron, that can deal with him receiving communication that is from an unconventional source, or that is from an abnormal source. Also, his Chiron squaring the sun deals with all the scars that he has inflicted upon himself. He also has Mars in Capricorn, and that can deal with him inflicting the wounds in his skin. Also, trying to draw images on his skin, on his face in particular. And his Mars is in square to his node. So his Mars is in square to his Libra South node. It's in square to his Aries North node. So that again can point to some type of male influence that is causing him to commit these egregious acts. But of course, like I said, that male influence is not even of the flesh. It is a discarnate entity. Also, this shows that, again, like I said, because Mars is in the mix, Mars square South Node in Libra, that reinforces what I said about him not being in total control of himself, him not being fully himself, or operating according to his own will, according to his own motivations. His moon is in Pisces. That reinforces his birth number of 16. So there's the spirituality theme again. Also, he has Jupiter in square to Uranus, so that could deal with weird religious beliefs, weird spiritual beliefs. And he has Saturn in Sagittarius, and that reinforces the whole theme about the spirituality as well. And also it's squaring his Pisces moon. Now, I don't know what time he was born, but I did propose a birth time of around 10 a.m. because that would put Pluto and Venus in his first house. That would make him a Scorpio rising, and he does have that Virgo Scorpio look going on, because Virgo can produce a rather demure look, but Nikko Jenkins is rather bulky. Like he's still small in build, so he still has that Virgo build, but he's muscular and he has some bulk to him. So that's one of the reasons why I propose his ascendant to be in Scorpio, and where Pluto and Venus are in the first house, close to the ascendant, which points to the scars on his face and him inflicting wounds upon himself. So he also has Chiron opposition Uranus in Sagittarius. So again, that deals with him receiving communication or messages from some unconventional, some abnormal source, or it can also deal with him being a follower of unconventional teachings, unconventional religion, what have you. Let me see what else he has. His Mercury is in Libra, which reinforces that Libra self-node. So that shows that his mind is not fully his own. And then his Mercury, boom, is in square to Neptune. So there it is right there. His mind, that's the mental illness, but it can also point to a mind that is haunted. A mind that is also very impressionable to outside influences. And the outside influences doesn't necessarily have to be people in the flesh. It could be a spirit. So he definitely has a number of factors that are pointing to demonic possession, being haunted, spiritual possession. Now, the detectives and the prosecutor, they didn't really believe that he was really schizophrenic, but I believe that he is. And that deals with the voices. Venus conjoined to Pluto in Scorpio, and it's in sesqui square to Chiron in Gemini. So that is basically him receiving these communication or receiving messages from these voices that he's hearing. And then with Chiron squaring the sun, that's him actually acting on it. And then his sun is opposed to Jupiter. That's where basically he's dissociated. He is able to dissociate himself from even committing those crimes. That's why he keeps on blaming it on Apophis, this demonic deity. So that his Jupiter is in Pisces, and it's opposing his Virgo sun, and that Jupiter in Pisces can point to that deity, Apophis, having influence on him, over him. Now, I'm not saying that it is actually this Apophis influencing him, but basically he had to put a name on this demon. So maybe that he did some research and then came up with the name of the demon by doing research into Egyptology and all that. But he is a sick pup, hands down. And with him being a Virgo, he is just volatile. And Virgo is a mutable sign, and mutable signs are prone to extreme acts of violence. See what else he got going on. Oh, and another crazy thing is he comes from a whole family of criminals. So I think he's like the fourth generation of felons. His mother is in prison today, I believe. His sister is in prison as well because she was an accomplice in some of the murders that he committed. And yeah, this is interesting. He has the asteroid Shiva, which deals with the destroyer, conjoined to Uranus. And Shiva is in Sagittarius. So there it is again about that spirituality theme, and how he was basically, he believed that he was supposed to bring destruction upon certain people as a result of him making being in allegiance to this deity. What's interesting is he has Sappho conjoined to Neptune. Now that could just deal with him being locked up and being around nothing but men. But I would also think that, you know, he was probably bisexual as well while he was in prison or whatever like that, or he just might be naturally bisexual. But another interesting thing about this Libra South Node, Nikko Jenkins was married at the time that he was arrested. So I believe he's still married to this woman, and she has mental health issues as well, because I saw an interview with her and it's very apparent. But I'm not sure if she's locked up right now, but she does have a criminal record as well. So he he was basically born surrounded by evil, surrounded by negativity, surrounded by criminal, um, basically criminals, people in his own family. So that's just my little case study on Nikko Jenkins. Oh, before I wrap this up, I just gotta say one more thing. So he has Mars opposed to Estrella, and that can deal with him going too far with the mutilations, carving his face up. And as you can see in the pictures, I mean, he just looks ridiculous. But that, in my opinion, that's a clear sign of demonic possession. People that get their face all tatted up, or that engage in self mutilation. And I'm not talking about just, you know, the average person who's going through things like an emo teen and they cut themselves. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about extreme mutilation, like you're carving images into your penis, you're carving images or messages into your face. So by them saying that, you know, he just had antisocial personality disorder, come on now. That's not indicative of someone who would mutilate their face, mutilate their penis in such a manner. He's definitely dealing with some level of schizophrenia, probably bipolar as well. So I just think it was interesting that they, you know, really tried to downplay his mental illness, but of course they did this so that he could get the death penalty. So that's my take on Nikko Jenkins. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know what you think about mental illness versus demonic possession. Do you believe that they're mutually exclusive, or do you believe that they there's a correlation? I believe there's a correlation, especially when we're talking about severe mental illnesses like schizophrenia, where people are hearing voices. Now, it may not always be demons that are talking to people who have schizophrenia. It might actually be angels, but it could be people who are their ancestors, spirits who have just crossed over or whatever. But in Nikko Jenkins' case, in my opinion, it was definitely demons, or at least one demon that was basically the source of the voices. So again, post a comment, let me know what you think. If you have heard about this story before, let me know what you think about whether he deserves death row, or whether you feel like he shouldn't get death row because he has a severe mental illness. So in my opinion, I do believe he still should be given the death penalty. I am rather I can be rather hard nosed when it comes to situations like this. And my main reason for that is somebody like him, you can't fix. He's broken. Like he's basically not even himself. He's a shell of himself, and some other entity has taken over, maybe not fully, but for, I would say, 50% of him is not in control. Oh no, I'd say more than 50%. And you have to ask yourself, if you're not in the driver's seat, who is? Somebody's going to be in that driver's seat. And if you're not in the driver's seat, that means that it could be a spirit, it could be a demon, but it could be an actual person in the flesh. So that's what that South Node in Libra also pertains to. A lot of times, South Node Libra individuals are not in the driver's seat. That North Node in Aries means that you need to be in the driver's seat. Also, I just got to add that North Node in Aries is prone to conflict. So he did live through his North Node in Aries by creating a bunch of conflict and destruction and being this type of warrior for this deity. but he just went about it the wrong way. But that just shows you that you could be living partially through your North Node, but still be going down the wrong path. So if you would like a reading, just go to my website at rabina.com and I'll be at your service. Peace and many blessings.